So I'm here with Greg Neri, and I always like to ask writers kind of how they got started with kind of how did you know writing was something you wanted to do all the time?
Right. Well, writing came very late to me, so it wasn't something I ever thought I would be doing or could do. I was a filmmaker before and digital media person, so forms of storytelling. And I had a film project that turned out wanted to be a book instead of a film. And so I always look at stories as living things. It's kind of like raising a child. Like you might want that your child to grow up to be a lawyer, a doctor or something, but they're going to be whatever it is inside them. And the same thing with a story. You may think it's a movie, but it actually wants to be a book, you know. And so your job as a creator is to help bring it into the world, you know, in a way that and support what it wants to be. So that wanted to be ended up being a graphic novel, and I ended up liking that experience so much because it was a lot more immediate than making a film. Because making a film is such a big effort. You need like lots of money, lots of people, and you spend most of your time just trying to do that thing. Whereas if you do a book, you have an idea. You just sit down and write. You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to raise money. So it's just much more immediate. And so after I did that book, I had another opportunity to do another book, and then another one, and just kind of happened organically. So it was not a planned thing. It just kind of...
Nothing good ever is?
Yeah.
Would you ever consider screenwriting?
Yeah. Well, since I started in movies, I was doing screenwriting.
You were?
And so that's kind of how I learned storytelling in a written format. And so a lot of my books, at least to me and my readers, I think it feels like a movie. You know, it's kind of, because I see it as a movie in my head, and I think that the readers see it too. So they can be easily adapted.
No, that's great. Because I've also kind of played with that idea myself, the screenwriting, because I'm really comfortable with dialogue.
Yeah, me too.
So,
I like dialogue.
Yeah.
I'm very good at dialogue and natural dialects and things like that.
Yeah, I have well, my mother is a musician, so kind of have an ear for certain things.
Yeah.
So then my next question to you would be, what has been the most rewarding part of this kind of journey for you?
Mostly like meeting the readers and hearing about the impacts that my books actually have on people, and actually not just that they like it or affected by it, but I have a lot of cases where a particular book has actually kind of changed somebody's life, you know, and that seems like crazy notion that a book can actually change someone's life, but I have so many stories of kids who, like, sometimes it just takes one thing to turn somebody in a different direction, and like, and just like these amazing, inspiring stories coming from something that I did is enough to keep writing, you know, when you hear those stories. Like, you don't need, anything else doesn't really matter, you know, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm actually really fascinated, because I learned today that you wrote that book about kind of fictionalized Truman Capote and Harper Lee. What kind of led to that? Well,
it was hearing that they grew up as next-door neighbors in the middle of nowhere in southern Alabama, and which was crazy enough by itself, and that they bonded over a mutual love of detective fiction, and that they went around solving small-town crime together as Sherlock Holmes and Watson. So the idea of writing them into their own detective mystery where they were solving the cases like they actually did. I really wanted to see that book, but nobody had written it, so I had to write it to see it. So.
And I know it has a Christmas story.
And so there's a second book, which is a Christmas story, because Truman wrote all these wonderful Christmas stories, and so it just kind of happened like that book is more of an homage to his stories and those Christmas stories, and the first one is more the story behind To Kill a Mockingbird, I think. So.
Great. Well, I'd like to finally talk to you about the Truth campaign, which and I heard you were kind of part of the onus behind that.
Right.
And kind of how that has kind of expanded in a way that probably was unexpected.
Yeah, well, it was an organic effort. So the state of Florida got all the settlement money from the tobacco settlement, and it was supposed to be used to create an anti-smoking campaign. So we and another agency and student-led groups formed this group called The Truth, and that we would use all forms of advertising, print, online, commercials, to come up with ways that would really hit people hard. So that means kind of guerrilla campaign that was way different than anything else you saw, so it really stood out, like, whoa,
It did.
And so students had a lot of input on it, and were able to organize and do things on the ground. So it was very interesting collaboration between different groups of people that normally don't get to collaborate together. So, and that it was kind of sponsored by the state of Florida is pretty kind of radical idea.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I guess the final question for you, is there anything, current projects you're working on now?
Oh yeah, I usually have a few things going on. So I have 2 books coming out this year. One is a picture book about the childhood friendship between Simon and Garfunkel, and
I'm sorry, I'm geeking out completely. I love them.
And the other is a graphic novel, which is about a story about my cousin. And then I'm doing a sequel to another book I wrote called Ghetto Cowboy, and a couple other projects that are still in the early stages. So.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
All right.
And I guess I'll go ahead and bye.